If you're an e-commerce entrepreneur, maybe you sell products or maybe you just sell services in the space, and you're wanting to get up to speed on what AI is, how it's affecting our industry, and where is all of this going, well, this video is made exactly for you. I've taken the last 10 months of research and building actual AI systems for real e-commerce businesses, and I've compressed it down into a handful of the most meaningful frameworks and concepts that have helped me wrap my head around what exactly this technology is and how it's going to affect our industry moving forward. I've also included 3 of the most surprising discoveries that have helped shape the way I think about the tech. So stick around for that. I hope they spark as many ideas for you as they have for me. Well, before we dive in, being a brand new YouTube channel, I feel an introduction's in order. My name is Jeremiah. I'm actually not an AI developer. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a background in e-commerce, starting with an e-commerce accounting firm back in 2014 called MuseMinded. We worked with hundreds of clients along the way, ended up dabbling in some products on the side as well. And then last year, I exited that firm and took the time off to explore AI, see what all the fuss is about, and kind of figure out what my next steps were going to look like. And that's when I ended up co-founding Thank You Robot. As an AI development studio, we've been focused on e-commerce since day one. We spent a lot of time working in Amazon ads. We've done things from analyzing the buyer intent of search terms so that we could progress those terms down different ad architectures. We've built a lot of back-end data integrations, not only pulling data out of Amazon, but also sending data back to Amazon, creating full campaigns, ad groups, new keywords, updating bids, etc. We've also gone to set up multi-client custom analytics dashboards. So if you have 20, 30, 40, 50 different clients or more, each of them can log in and see brand new custom analytics. We're now exploring how to bundle in AI so that the clients can chat with their own data. We've built whole data syncs across Shopify, Amazon, Meta ads, Google ads, etc. So enough about me. Let's dig into the heart of this video, starting with what is AI anyway. I want to give you some macro and micro frameworks that have really helped me understand what is this technology, why does it even matter, where does it fit into the bigger picture of the technology landscape that we have today. So let's start with a macro framework. And I want to stress here that AI is not an innovation in isolation. It's really off the back of 2 other technologies, the first of those being computing. Fundamentally, what that innovation was taking information, and I think the world was surprised at how much of their day-to-day life could be compressed down to information, and it digitized it, allowed you to store it on a machine and manipulate it in a million different ways. So what was previously done on paper, you can now do in a spreadsheet, and just how much of the world has been transformed by digitizing information and allowing you to manipulate it. But it didn't stop there. In the rise of the 90s and beyond, the rise of the internet, we now took information which you could store, manipulate on computers, and now provided a protocol by which you could send that information all across the world at light speed practically. And you just think between computing and internet, how many industries have been upended? You take Barnes and Noble's stalwarts in the book industry and get upended by Amazon in a matter of a few years, purely because Amazon took advantage of computing and internet, whereas Barnes and Noble were left watching from the sidelines. And that's where generative AI comes in. Not only can we store and manipulate information, not only can we transfer it across the globe, but now we can make sense of it. We can make meaning from that information, which was previously the job that only you and I could do, right? Through a computer, we look at information, we make sense of it, make decisions from it, choose to make different actions off of the back of that information. Well, now we have computers who can look at information, make sense of it, analyze it, and make decisions and perform other computational functions. And so in the same way that the world was not prepared for computing and the internet and how much that revolutionized whole industries, I still think so many people, no matter the hype, are still underprepared for how massive of a transformation is coming, because all of our work, all digital work, is some combination of information storage, transformation, transfer, and decision making and meaning making off of the back of that information. So the main point I want to make here is just how big of a transformation on the order of computing in the internet generative AI is. And if you're watching this video, you're obviously preparing for that future. So kudos to you. Now let's switch gears to our second framework, which is a micro framework. So at the heart of this new wave of AI, generative AI, is a language model. Language models have been around for a little while, but large language models are relatively new. And the reason they're called large language models is because they feed an insane amount of information, essentially trained across all the public information on the internet, and then loads and loads of private data as well. All this comes together to form a type of digital brain. That's how I like to think of it. So this digital brain can understand language, it can understand pictures and sounds even. This brain essentially allows it to reason across different information data points. And so I kind of want to dig into how does it actually work. And so the first concept is something called embedding or vector embedding. And so I wanted to give a little bit of a mental picture of how this works. So imagine you have 8 words: cat, kitten, dog, houses, man, woman, king, queen. And then you have 7 different traits. Let's call them dimension. And so on the living being dimension, cat scores relatively high, a 0.6, but with houses, that's a negative 0.8. It is not a living being, right? But then you have feline and human and gender and royalty and verb and plural. These are all dimensions on which you can classify a cat. I think of this almost like the psychology of how does this actual digital brain work? When it looks at cat, it doesn't see cat. It actually sees a numerical scoring of all these different dimensions that it's been trained on. So essentially what's happening is cat is no longer CAT. Cat is a whole series of numbers that when put together and mapped against other words or other bits of information, you can start to get a mental image in your mind of, oh, when I plot it and I think about it in sort of a mathematical space, cat is pretty darn close to kitten. It's kind of close to dog. It's a little bit farther away from houses. And so what happens is it essentially maps these data points into numerical representation, whether they're words, it could be sounds, it could be pixels of images or what have you. And then I think this is just really cool. So take, for example, man, woman, king, queen. It's not just the numerical representation that matters. It's actually the relationships, the space between these representations that are actually quite important. For example, man is to woman as king is to what? Essentially, what's happening here is like, okay, well, man is to woman. Well, woman is up and to the right of man by this much distance. What is up and to the right of king by that distance? Oh, actually, it's queen. So man is to woman as king is to queen. And that's how the tool's like, oh, queen is the answer you're looking for. So I just think, it's a little bit nerdy, but I think it's really, really interesting how essentially really, really smart people have found a way to take almost all the information in the world, and by feeding it a lot of these patterns and teaching it how to recognize patterns, it basically creates numerical representations of all different types of data points, but not just on 7 dimensions, it's on billions of dimensions, right? So anyways, this is one way of how this large language model works. This other concept I want to share with you is actually the generative part of generative AI. How does it actually come up with stuff, right? And I thought it was just like really helpful unlock for me of understanding that at the core of this is this sort of predictive engine for knowing what is the next thing to say or next thing to do. So for example, if I said to you, Mary had a little what? If you're familiar with the nursery rhyme, you would say Mary had a little lamb. But if you're not familiar with the nursery rhyme, you might say Mary had a little toy, a little boat, a little horse. I don't know. What did Mary have, right? And actually, the generative AI programs work a very similar way based on all of its prior experience, which is why they spend so much time and so much money giving it a prior experience. It's all the time predicting what's the next bit of information I need to add in order to accomplish whatever it is, the goal or the task that it's been set out to do. For example, who is the actress that played Rose in the 1997 film Titanic? Well, this is an actual example. The actress that played Rose in the 1997 film Titanic is named and it said Kate, and then it said Winslet. She was born. And actually, what's happening here is the word Kate, there was a 65% chance of it saying the word Kate, right? And actually, that ended up being the right answer. But there was also a chance that it could have said Gloria or Francis or Rose or Billy. And so, in the end, this is how you can start to see the strength and the weakness of AI, because it was not always like predetermined that it was going to say Kate Winslet. There was a chance it could have said Gloria whatever, right? So that this probabilistic mechanism by which it creates information, it's a strength of it because it allows it to create almost infinite permutations of information. It can create almost any sequence of words or pixels or sounds. And so that creativity, so to speak, that dynamism is one of the really, really fundamental strengths of this technology that allows it to do so many different things that traditional automation can't. At the same time, it's also kind of its weakness because 1 out of 10 times it's going to say Gloria, right? And that would be untrue, and this is where that whole AI, you got to be careful with it because it can hallucinate or make up information or just say things that are untrue. The reality is, we all can do that too, right? You might say Mary had a little boat and you would be wrong, but that was your best guess based on your prior experience. And in the same way, AI can kind of do the same thing. So I just wanted to illustrate why AI, it's very flexible and how that's a strength, but at the same time, it's a weakness. So you really need to understand and put guardrails around the weak aspect of generative AI. Okay, so enough technical details about the digital brain itself. Just want you to know that's one building block of what AI is in terms of functional AI that does stuff in your business. The next building block, something called functions, often called tools. This is what allows the brain to actually do things. And when you put functions together with a brain, you often get something what's called an AI agent. So I like to think of functions or tools as the body that goes around the brain. It allows the brain to do legit, actual things in the world, right? So brain can think. That's super cool. It's kind of the most important part of all of this, but it's still, at the end of the day, just a brain. You need to put a body around it to operate in the world. And so you think about ChatGPT, it has a language model at the heart of it, but it also has functions that allow it to receive messages from you, send messages back to you. It can also do calculations and write code and even search the internet. All of those things are functions or tools that allow the brain to do things, perform certain types of actions. The next building block is something called threads. So threads is like every time you start a new chat with an AI, what's going on there? Why do you have to always start new threads? Why can't you just keep one thread open the whole time? So I like to think of threads as like little micro lifetimes for an AI agent. So imagine every time you start a new thread, it's basically like a new little AI agent is spawning into existence. It has a lot of information. It's low key, kind of a genius, but it doesn't know anything about you. It's basically a stranger to you and what's going on in your life. So if you want it to do something for you, yes, it's going to need a brain. Yes, it's going to need functions, but it's probably also going to need some information about you. It's essentially every thread. It's like it's waking up with no knowledge of you and what's going on prior with you. And so that's a little bit counterintuitive, right? Most of the other intelligent things that you interface with every day hold memories and hold on to the moments or the thread, so to speak, of their interactions with you. AI currently doesn't really have that, which is why you need this next building block, which are prompts. A lot's been said about prompts. They're super, super important. Again, because when that AI spawns in front of you and its lifetime with you begins, no information about you. How are you going to give it that information? That's where the prompt comes in. Let's say you want to build a little digital house. You're going to need to give it some background information like, hi, I'm Jeremiah. I want to build a little digital house. And you need to tell it what you want it to accomplish for you and how you want to accomplish. Like, hey, I want you to build a little digital house. I want it to have a roof, and I want it to have a window and a door, and I want it to be black, right? So that background information is super, super crucial so that it can use its brain and its body, its functions to go and accomplish the work that you would like it to achieve for you. Spend a lot of time just on that. Just know that that is a key building block. And the reason why is completely tied to the whole like lack of memory. And each thread is like a new lifetime for that AI agent with you. Now, the final building block, and this is super, super crucial, it's data. Think of data as the raw materials of getting work done. So you might have a brain, you might have a body that does stuff. You started a new thread and you've given it the perfect prompt with your plan. But if the agent doesn't have access to the data it needs to manipulate, then it's not going to get the work done, right? Let's say you want to send an email to your buddy Tommy, and you want to send a report of what's been going on in your business. You can say, hey, ChatGPT, it's got a brain. You know how to write words, right? I want you to send an email to my buddy Tommy. Let's assume it's able to connect to Gmail and has a function to send an email. Problem is the agent doesn't know what Tommy's email is, right? So you're going to have to give access to Tommy's email so it knows where to send the email, right? But you're also going to have to give it access to the report, whether you drop the report in manually or you give it access to Google Drive so they can go pull that data. Regardless, I like to think it's the raw materials of getting any work done. All digital work fundamentally comes down to some combination of extracting data, transforming or manipulating the data, and then sending it somewhere else on the internet. So data, final building block, super, super important. When you put it all together, hey, you got the brain, you got the body, you got the plan, and you have the fundamental raw materials, and now you can structure that data into a nice little brick house that is digital work. Okay, so that's the second framework. The final one I want to share with you is this idea that not all AI solutions are equal. They're not all equal in the scope of work that they do for you. And let me just be clear, these are my own terms. These are not technical terms for AI. But the first sort of bucket of AI solutions, what I would call an AI tool. It has a brain, it has a body, it can perform a essentially singular function for you. It has one job that it can do for you. This is something like the AI portrait generators. It's like, hey, send me 20 pictures of yourself, and I'll create all kinds of digital avatars for you. I'll have pictures of you in formal attire and casual attire. I'll have some of you outside versus in an office. That is an AI tool. It has one job to make AI portraits of you. And it's only ever going to do that one job. It's not going to send any emails for you or what have you. Well, that stands in contrast to AI agents. So AI agents essentially have many different jobs that they can play. ChatGPT is an AI agent. Like I said, it can research the internet for you. It can perform calculations. It can write code. It can talk back and forth. These are many different jobs. It's a wide range of different tasks it could perform for you. But even AI agents stand in contrast to what I would call AI systems. This is where, as opposed to an AI agent can do several different jobs kind of in isolation, an AI system is a sort of comprehensive package of automation that allows to like ship whole processes of information out. So for example, you'd have something like maybe a traditional automation that sends a package of data to an agent who then performs work on that data and sends it to another agent that then goes on to complete the final bit of work, right? So it's a whole collection of different like traditional automations with other AI agents and different data pipelines or different integrations that when all bundled together produces some larger bit of work, typically whole workflows or whole processes for you. So not all AI solutions are created equal. It's really important, I think, to understand what am I working with, an AI tool, an AI agent, an AI system. And at Thank You Robot, what we've been really focusing on is these AI systems and how can they accomplish whole packages of work, whole processes for e-commerce businesses. Which leads me to the first of three so-called surprising insights, which is just that somewhere along the way, I realized as we're building these AI systems for our clients that I don't know, 90+% or more of the work that we were doing, the automation that we're building, wasn't actually even technically AI. It was just traditional automation infrastructure that we needed to build around the AI to get it to do the job that it needed to do. And when I say traditional automation, I mean data integrations, setting up data pipelines to stream data to the agent so it could do its work, or building these sort of predictable functions that an AI agent, I don't know, you don't technically even want an AI agent to be doing that work. You just want it to stay really consistent, which I'll explain in just a minute. But I bring this up to say when you talk about AI systems, 90% of building that system actually isn't even language model driven. It's building traditional automation around the language model itself. And that's really important because if you're going to build AI for your business, you're going to need to become proficient at working with the data sources that your business runs on. So you're going to have to get in to Amazon's API, to Shopify's API documentation, and really understand how to pull data from those places. And if you're going to work with somebody, I would be thinking, how do I work with someone that understands my data and where to get it from? So I'm not dishing out a lot of money for them to research API documentation and build pipelines for me. So that's the end of this first section. What is AI? Now we're going to talk about what can AI do now that's truly useful. And what I think is really interesting about this point is paradoxically, AI can do almost nothing for your e-commerce business and almost anything simultaneously. And what I mean by that is just that if you don't give the language model the right functions, access to the right data, it's not going to do much for your business. ChatGPT is not going to manage your inventory for you or manage your ads for you because it doesn't have the functions and access to the data to do that. But the flip side of that is if you do give it the data and you do give it the functions to perform the work that you want to automate, the AI system can do pretty much anything in your business. And let me illustrate a little bit further. Let's take managing Amazon ads. That system is actually a system of systems, right? So the first system is setting up ad campaigns. The next one is adjusting the bids up and down based on performance. The third one is progressing or moving search terms depending on what type of campaign architecture you use. You're going to want to make decisions about search terms, whether turning them off or taking them from broader targeting campaign types to more specific targeting campaign types. So these are three different basically systems that all together form a larger AI system, which is managing Amazon ads. Let's go a layer deeper. A specific task inside of this AI system. I mentioned this a few minutes ago that in any AI system, you're going to have traditional automation and AI kind of automations. A way I like to think about it is every process essentially can be broken up into either hard automations or soft automations. The hard automations are the parts of the process that are very predictable. You want them to be very consistent and operate the same way every single time, right? It's like, I don't need you any creativity for these tasks. I don't want you to do them a slightly different way. It's like, do what I told you, put this data over here in this way every single time. So in an Amazon ads workflow, this would be things like syncing product info back from Amazon. We don't need any loosey-goosey way of doing that. We don't need some fancy creative way of doing that. Sync the same product back to the database the same way every single time. When you add new objects into Amazon, syncing ad objects back, calculating bids. We don't need a fancy new way of calculating the bid. Just calculate it the way I said every single time. Very formulaic, right? So these are all parts of the process that are hard automation based. But then you have some processes that are inherently loosey-goosey, where you're not totally sure how you could predict all the variables in advance. And that's exactly where language models shine. So imagine you need in your ads workflow, you wanted to segment products by buyer intent. Let's say you're a seasoning manufacturer. You're like, I want to make some ad groups with salt, and I'm going to make some with pepper, and I want to make some with salt and pepper because those are just different ways that people might want to buy things, right? So just like analyzing products and putting them into segments, that would be very, very hard to build a hard automation around. Let's talk about broad keywords. If you want to generate broad keywords, that's going to require a little bit of creativity. That's going to require some generative AI-ness to, if you want to automate that. I'm not going to use the same keywords every single time for every campaign that you create. Also, deciding how keywords progress, whether you're going to stop targeting them or target them in new ways. Again, that these are all soft automation parts of it. If you combine the right bits of hard automation and soft automation, you can automate almost any process in an e-commerce business. For example, you can automate ads, right? You could automate catalog content, generating that catalog content for your listings and maybe syncing them across the internet on your different channels, managing inventory, do financial planning, market research and analysis. Essentially, almost the whole stack of the business fundamentally breaks down to some combination of hard automations and soft automations together, which is why AI is such a big deal. Prior, we only had hard automations. There was like 70 to 80% of all these processes could be done with software. But now that we bundle in generative AI, we can get the final 10, 20, 30% of the process automated via soft automations. And let me just put a little bit of caution. There are a couple of things that I would say maybe AI can't do or maybe shouldn't do. And those are media and creative. So anytime you need photos or videos, something like that, I would say be careful. Well, the AI can handle that kind of stuff. And actually, the models have recently got quite good at doing ad creative. It's really, really super amazing. But I would just have a little pause in my mind that if any part of your process requires some type of media or creative, I'm not fully confident right now that AI can just take over that and do it at or above a human level. The other side is unproven processes. At the end of the day, I like to think about the architect of the process still being very much a human should be doing that. So you can get an AI if, let's say, you don't know how to do financial planning and you get AI to build out a financial planning process for you, and you find some way to turn that into a combination of hard and soft automations, and you build a whole AI system around financial planning. If you got AI to build that process for you, I would just be a little bit nervous, right? I would rather have someone that understands financial planning, understands the nuance of financial planning for my specific use case. What are the edge cases? What are the things I need to worry about? That all that real life experience, and also someone that can make a process better over time. That's really a job I think humans still hold and are necessary for. So I would be very hesitant to come in and try to automate processes in your business that you don't understand yet and that aren't proven from your perspective. In that case, you go work with someone that does and potentially collaborate with them to automate it. That's 2 points of caution around what can AI do for e-commerce businesses today. But what's really interesting about all of this, and this is that second insight, is the primary constraint for an e-commerce business is no longer what can AI do inside of my business today. It's really what can I afford to build? What is feasible for me right now? Which ties in really nicely to this next section. Where's AI going? How's this going to affect us? And here's 4 trends that I see and I think you should keep in mind. So the first trend that I see is the cost of building AI is coming down and is coming down fast. And the reason that's important is because there's certain projects today that just going back to feasibility just don't make sense. There's no point in investing tens of thousands of dollars to save hundreds or thousands, right? As a result, you would not do those projects today. But because the cost of building is coming down so quickly, in 6 to 12 months' time, it actually might make a lot of sense to build things that are just not feasible today. And part of the reason why is just because the infrastructure around building the AI is getting much more robust. There's many more tools, and the effectiveness of these tools in building AI systems is really growing. And part of that is low code, no code platforms. So Zapier, Make.com, N8N, we built a lot of automation on N8N, and those tools make it quite easy to get your hands dirty and start building AI systems. The problem is, and this is like a cautionary tale, and I'm going to make another video about this, is just that the ceiling on how much complexity these platforms can handle, how complex of automations or AI systems you can build, is actually quite low. Whereas the complexity of the work you're trying to do likely will outstrip these type of platforms. And as a result, we've ended up having to convert nearly all of the automations that we do over to custom code as a result of that. So anyways, just a cautionary tale about that. But in general, the cost of building AI is coming down. It's becoming more feasible and quickly. And the second trend that I see is that AI systems are going to disrupt e-commerce services much more and much sooner than e-commerce brands. And here's why. Again, it's tied back to feasibility. In an e-commerce brand, you already have a pretty high leverage business model. Most e-commerce brands have very few staff. With just an owner or partner and a couple of virtual assistants, you can build 7, 8 figure businesses, right? So the labor is a relatively small portion of what's going on in that business. The same can't be said of an e-commerce service. That is the primary cost. So whereas in an e-commerce brand, it doesn't make sense to spend tens of thousands of dollars to automate labor that you're paying thousands of dollars for. In an e-commerce service business, it might make sense to spend tens of thousands of dollars to save money on labor that you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on every day, right? Or just to augment the existing labor so that it can work with many more clients for the same amount of labor that you have. So with that being said, the feasibility of AI systems for service-based businesses is much higher. And as a result, e-commerce service businesses are going to invest much more and much sooner than most e-commerce brands. Now, that leads to the third, as e-commerce service providers are investing more and more money into building AI systems around their service, I think you're going to see this transition from software tools to full service software. And what I mean by that is right now, you like, I can work with an agency that is full service, or I can use an advertising platform. I think you're going to see something that blends those two together. So instead of just a tool that helps me do one part of my process, it's going to be a whole service that kind of looks like full service, kind of looks like software. It blends the line between the two, and you're not totally sure how much of this is software and how much of this is people. I think you're also going to see situations where, like that advertising agency that you were previously working with, they're going to offer you a few different options. They're going to say, do you want to work with our US team, or you want to work with our international team, or you want to work with our AI team? Right now, you have a dozen different tools that augment different parts of your workflow. Soon, you'll be able to buy whole aspects of your business via agencies. The final trend is actually the final insight here, which is I see in the near future, the number one use case for e-commerce entrepreneurs being using AI to write custom code for you. 90+% of building a full AI system is just the data integrations, the functions that go around the agents, the so-called hard automations that go around the soft automations. I believe the number one way you're going to use AI is not just automating a particular part of your business, but to automate anything in your business. It's to write the custom code that can automate anything in your business. And I think there's two big implications here. One being that collaborating with AI to automate your proven processes, I think that's going to be the next big e-commerce skill, give entrepreneurs leverage and build even bigger business with even lower overhead. Like there was a time when building websites and managing international supply chains and working with international assistants and contractors, those were not widespread and well understood skills. But e-commerce entrepreneurs, they saw the opportunity, they started to learn about it, and they employed it in their business and built even more leverage into their businesses. And I think the key point of this is that it's automating your proven processes, right? So the stuff that you internally understand. And that's where the second implication comes is for all the other processes, the stuff that you don't want or have the internal expertise and the internal resources to improve that process over time, you're likely going to buy those services, those processes, the output of that work from agencies who can use AI to build custom code for you and make these customized one-of-one services for you. I think that's the future, the implication of when AI can write any custom code and make any automation, you're going to be able to automate your own stuff internally, and you're going to work with people that they have the proven process and the understanding, and they'll be able to automate that for you and manage that on an ongoing basis. And actually, that's what I'm doing with my prior firm, MuseMinded. So they're an e-commerce accounting firm. I want to give them a shout out today. So we're working right now to build an AI powered financial planning system, a customized one-of-one service for our clients. So I just wanted to plug them and shout them out. If you're looking for someone who's ahead of the curve and is looking to use this technology to better their clients' lives, I recommend checking out MuseMinded, museminded.com. They can do bookkeeping, accounting, tax, financial planning, the whole 9 yards. But this is a wrap on this video. Thanks for watching. I did want to tease out a little sneak peek of topics that are coming up, what I'm planning to do with this channel. So if you're familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk, you'll know his concept of entrepreneurs. They should have their heads in the clouds and their hands in the dirt. Well, as a fellow entrepreneur, the kind of content that I was wanting months ago when I was starting this journey, I was looking for philosophies, frameworks, trends, new development. I just help me think about what this technology is and where it's going. So there's going to be more content, cloud content, so to speak, that I'm hoping to launch in the coming weeks. And then I'm also going to have dirt content. We actually dig into what are the tools, the processes that we're using. We'll go into specific e-com use cases and full-on tutorials. So if any of those topics seem really interesting to you, please subscribe. Also leave a comment with topics or specific use cases or ideas that you'd like me to address in a future video. I'm super open to that. And if you have any questions about building AI systems for your brand or your agency, what have you, drop me a line at thankyurobot.ai. Happy to talk. Even if you just want to shoot the breeze or talk about your business specifically, happy to do that. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.